Canada, of course, paid for the construction of the bridge, over $4 billion, that the ownership is shared between the state of Michigan and the government of Canada.
What if the threat to stop the Gordie How International Bridge was never really about protecting America? What if it had nothing to do with trade policy at all? What if the real issue was shielding a powerful private monopoly from competition? New reporting now suggests that only hours before Donald Trump publicly signaled he could block the opening of the Gordie How Bridge, the owner of the competing Ambassador Bridge met with the U.S. Commerce Secretary. That timing has raised serious questions in Washington. Lawmakers are now examining whether this was political strategy or something far more troubling. The issue is no longer simple rhetoric. It is about whether federal authority may have been used in a way that benefits a private billionaire.
The president is calling out Canada for what he says they're doing in building a, quote, massive bridge between Ontario and Michigan, saying that Canada owns both sides of the land and therefore they're going to build it with virtually no U.S. consent. He also says the Canadian government expects him to permit them to do this and take advantage of the U.S. He goes on to call out Mark Carney, who's the Prime Minister of Canada. Now, the two of them have had a very interesting relationship.
The Ambassador Bridge operates as a privately owned crossing, while the Gordie How International Bridge has been financed publicly through formal agreements between Canada and the United States. That difference is critical. The family that owns the Ambassador Bridge has strongly resisted the construction of the new span for years. The Gordie How Bridge would introduce direct competition at the busiest commercial land border crossing in North America, ending what many describe as a long-standing private grip over heavy truck traffic between Windsor and Detroit. And that control is highly valuable. Revenue from tolls, freight movement, and long-term infrastructure positioning generates enormous financial influence. Now look at the sequence of events. A meeting reportedly takes place between the private bridge owner and senior administration officials. Shortly afterward, the president signals he may block the publicly funded competitor. Members of Congress are not speculating casually. They are asking whether financial interests may have shaped national trade decisions. If someone who stands to lose major revenue gains access to top officials and federal power is then used in a way that protects that monopoly, the implications are serious. That would shift this from aggressive trade politics into a possible abuse of authority. It would suggest that cross-border infrastructure policy may have been influenced by private business concerns rather than broader economic strategy. That concern is precisely why congressional investigators are now demanding documentation and communication records.
Congressman Robert Garcia is now calling for emails, texts, and calendar records tied to that meeting, arguing it's unacceptable for a politically connected billionaire to influence trade policy. The Maroon family has long opposed the Gordie How Bridge, which would end its monopoly on commercial truck traffic at the busiest border crossing in North America. Garcia warns interference could increase congestion and disrupt U.S.-Canada trade.
Again, the contrast is clear. One bridge is privately controlled. The other was publicly funded to improve safety, increase efficiency, and support smoother trade flow between the two countries. The private owners have long opposed the new project because it threatens their near-exclusive hold on commercial truck crossings at this vital corridor. That dominance translates into significant financial return. Lawmakers now want to know whether that private stake played any role in federal decision-making. Requests have been made for emails, text messages, and meeting logs. Congressman Robert Garcia has formally demanded records from Trump. This is not a minor disagreement about infrastructure. It centers on whether national trade posture was influenced by a billionaire protecting his business interests. Michigan Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib has spoken bluntly, describing the situation as an example of billionaire favoritism becoming routine. She questioned why a politically connected bridge owner would meet administration officials shortly before the president threatened to block a competitor designed to be safer and more efficient. Those remarks are now entered into the congressional record. The conversation has clearly shifted. It is no longer framed as personality or political drama. It is framed as potential influence and accountability.
Speaking on AM 800, Michigan Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib saying, in her opinion, this is just par for the course.
Billionaire corruption goes hand in hand with the White House right now. So it wasn't a surprise to me that Matthew Maroon, the owner of the opposite, literally falling apart Ambassador Bridge, met with Trump administration hours before the president absurdly threatened to block the safer and more efficient Gordie How Bridge from opening. The Maroons have always taken this approach of donating to colleagues, both Democrats and Republicans in the United States, in a way that makes them look the other way when it comes to their lawlessness and not following various permit process and things of that nature.
Michigan Congresswoman Hillary Scholten has introduced legislation intended to prevent federal interference with the bridge's opening. Her proposal, called the Michigan-Canada Partnership Act, aims to stop last-minute federal obstacles. Lawmakers are acting quickly because the concern is no longer theoretical. Politically, this carries significant weight. Trump previously described his threat as defending American interests. But if investigations reveal that his actions closely followed engagement with a private owner facing financial loss, that justification weakens dramatically. The perception changes from policy defense to personal favoritism. That shift could be damaging. Meanwhile, Canada's approach appears measured. Ottawa funded the Gordie How project openly, respected bilateral agreements, and built support across party lines in Michigan. Rather than escalating tensions, Canadian leadership allowed U.S. institutions to respond internally. Strategically, that patience may prove effective. If oversight uncovers inappropriate influence, the consequences would be domestic and self-inflicted. What began as a dispute over infrastructure could evolve into a broader debate about ethics in governance. A bridge meant to symbolize economic cooperation may now symbolize political scrutiny, and if official records confirm coordination between private financial interests and federal pressure, this story would move beyond controversy into full-scale scandal.